As a mortgage lender, one of the main questions I get is, how do I buy a house with zero down? And there are a lot of programs for that. Check out my mortgage playlist. But zero down doesn't necessarily mean zero cost. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through what closing costs are, how much they are. I'm going to show you a sample loan estimate so you can easily compare lenders. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to give you a couple tips on how to get the closing costs down so it's truly zero down. So let's jump into it. Hey, what's up guys? I'm Ben Sund. Welcome to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. If this is your first time, welcome for the first time. I don't just talk about mortgage costs. I also talk about things like personal finance, investing, and real estate. So if that interests you, please hit that big red subscribe button. All right, so as I said in the open, zero down doesn't mean zero costs. And this can be confusing, especially to first-time home buyers. So let me break down what that means. Zero down refers to the down payment, meaning if you're buying a $300,000 house, you can borrow up to $300,000. Whereas normally you would have to put 3 or 5% down on the home. Now, there are things called closing costs and prepaids, which I'll get into more detail in just a second. Those are in addition to the down payment. Closing costs are the fees for your mortgage company and your title company or your lawyer to handle your closing, and they can be thousands of dollars. Generally speaking, the average closing cost is about 2% to 5% of your loan amount. So if we're doing a $300,000 home, you could have anywhere between $6,000 and $15,000 in closing costs. Now, that's a big difference. So it's really important that you shop your lenders and you shop multiple lenders to compare how to get the best interest rate and how to get the lowest fees. In just a second, I'll give you some tips on how to get the mortgage costs down so it's a truly 0% down mortgage. But first, there's another major cost that we have to talk about, and those are called prepaids, and those can also cost you thousands of dollars if you're not careful. So what are prepaids? Prepaids are your prepaid taxes and insurance. Lenders collect these at the closing, and they put it in an account for you. And so when your next tax and insurance bill comes due, they have enough money in that account. Now, as you make your monthly payment, each month a portion of that payment will go out into a separate account. It's still your money, it's still your account, but they take a portion of that payment out each month and it goes towards your next taxes and insurance bill. So when you close on your mortgage, you pay up your taxes and insurance for a full year. And then as you make monthly payments, a portion of that goes out. And then the next year, when it's due, you'll have enough money in there to pay the taxes and insurance. Now, if you don't have enough money in there, you're responsible for it. So this is still your money. You're just prepaying it. That's why they're called prepaids. You're prepaying it to guarantee that you have enough money so that your monthly mortgage payment doesn't go up for the following year. Now, if you're putting 20% down on a conventional mortgage, you can waive escrow, meaning they won't collect the prepaids at closing. And a lot of people like to do this because they would rather just pay the bill when it comes due. If you're good at budgeting, this might be a way to save you some money at the closing table. Again, it's still your money and you're still responsible for paying the taxes and insurance, but it's a way that you could add it into your budget rather than into your monthly mortgage payment. And the actual price for prepaids is going to vary greatly depending on the cost of your home and the area that you live in. And so I usually want to separate this out when shopping for lenders because it's technically not a fee. It goes into an account for you and it's still your money. It's just set aside for things that you're going to have to pay anyway. So when you're shopping for a lender, try to separate this out and look at the actual closing costs that they're charging you. This is going to give you a better idea of what lender is going to be a better deal, because prepaids aren't technically a lender fee. The lender doesn't control how much your property taxes and your insurance are. So speaking of shopping for lenders, let's walk through a mortgage quote or a document that's called a loan estimate. Every lender has to give you a document that's very similar to this. So let me walk you through the document so that you can get a good idea of what to look for and how to compare the lenders adequately so you know that you're getting the best deal. So this is what a loan estimate looks like. It gives you all the major details about your loan. And again, a lender is required to give you a copy, and each lender's copy is going to look very similar to this. So page 1 tells you the loan terms, or the terms of your loan. It's going to cover your loan amount, your interest rate, meaning the amount that you pay on the money that you borrow. There's a distinction here. We're going to look at another interest rate that's really important, but they're two separate things. This interest rate on page 1 is what the lender quoted you. So whatever the lender says your interest rate is It's going to be represented here on page 1, and that's your interest calculated on the amount of money that you're borrowing. And then further down the page, you'll see your payment, including taxes and insurance. And then you're going to see the amount of closing costs that you need to close the loan, or how much money that you need to have to close the loan. Now, page 2 is a breakdown of all the fees. And if you want to get really nerdy about it, you could go line by line and compare it lender to lender and see who's charging more. There's only one thing on sections A and B that you really need to look out for, though, and that is points. It's usually going to be in one of the first 2 lines in section A, and points are a lender's either charging you or giving you a credit for having the interest rate that you have. A lot of lenders automatically charge a 1% fee to give you a lower interest rate. And that's perfectly fine if you have the extra money. But if you don't have the extra money, and again, on our $300,000 house example, that's $3,000 that you have to come up with at closing. So it might be worth having a conversation with them and ask them what is the interest rate without paying any points. It might be worth taking a slightly higher interest rate and saving the $3,000 out of pocket. Now, this also helps you compare lender to lender, because if one lender is charging you points and another lender is not charging you points, it's going to look like the one lender's interest rate is way worse than the lender charging you. But again, you have to weigh whether or not you want to pay to have a lower interest rate, or if you're fine with just having the interest rate without you paying anything. And this is a good way for you to compare lender to lender, because you could ask the lender charging you what their interest rate would be if you're not paying points. It's probably going to be pretty similar to the lender that's not already charging you. Now, section C on the document is very important, because as you can see in the title, it says you can shop for these. These are going to be like your title company fees and any inspection fees aside from the appraisal. Now, again, these are things that you can shop for, meaning you should shop for them to see if you can get a better deal than what the lender's quoting, or maybe even what your agent recommended. A lot of real estate agents work with title companies, so they can usually get a pretty good price for you. But it might be worth calling around to a few different title companies and asking what they charge to do a closing of your home value. Now, the only thing on page 3 that you really want to look for, and this is the interest rate distinction that I made, it's called the APR. This is the cost of your loan represented as an interest rate. Now, that doesn't really matter, and again, it's not the same as what the lender's quoting you as far as the interest rate. That interest rate on page 1 is how much interest you're paying in comparison to the amount of money that you're borrowing. On page 3, this interest rate is just the costs of your loan represented as an interest rate. Now, the reason why I bring it up is because it's really easy to compare lender to lender using this number. So for instance, if they both have the same interest rate on page 1, and one of them has a 4.1% interest rate and the other has a 3.8% interest rate, it means that the one with 3.8% interest rate is going to charge you less fees than the one with a 4.1% interest rate, assuming again that the interest rate on page 1 are the same. So you kind of want to match the interest rate on page 1 first, and then you want to go to page 3 and look to see at that interest rate, or the APR, to compare the lender fees. Tip number 1 is to have your realtor ask for the sellers to pay your closing costs. Now, in this market, it's been fairly hard to get a seller to pay closing costs because houses are selling so quickly. But as the market starts to slow down and homes start to sell not as fast, we're already kind of seeing it where homes aren't getting 30 people all at the same home and people are paying way over asking for a house. As it starts to slow down, sellers are going to be more and more willing to pay for your costs. Now, on a conventional mortgage, sellers can pay up to 3% of your closing costs. So that very easily could cover all of your lender fees for you. Now, the other, on FHA and USDA rural development, they can cover up to 6%. And then on VA, they can cover up to 4% of your costs. So you could have a 0% down mortgage program and the sellers could pay for your closing costs, and now you have a loan that's truly zero out of pocket, aside from any optional things like home inspections and that. Those aren't required and those aren't built into a loan. So if you want to have a home inspection or certain inspections done, that would be out of pocket, but again, that's your choice. So tip number 2 is I usually recommend that people get 3 different quotes from 3 different lenders. It's a good way to gauge what the average fee should be. But one thing that people don't realize that you can do is you can have your lender price match your other lenders, and you can kind of compete them all against each other. I wouldn't necessarily tell them that's what you're doing because frankly it can be kind of annoying. But once you get a quote from all of them saying this is what our interest rate is, this is what our closing costs are, you could pick a lender with, say, the lowest interest rate and then have them price match closing costs, or ask if they can price match or negotiate the closing costs down for you. This is a pretty common practice in the mortgage industry, but it's something that you have to ask for. Most lenders aren't just going to do that for you. And as the real estate market starts to slow down, lenders are going to get more and more desperate to get you as a customer. And so they're going to be more likely to give you a better deal. But again, you have to ask for it. And frankly, I would ask all 3 lenders to price match to see what one comes back with the best deal. Now, tip 3 is ask about down payment assistance programs. There are programs that you can do. I made videos on them. Again, check out my mortgage playlist that you can do that are 0% down payment. But you could couple those programs with a down payment assistance program, because down payment assistance programs can cover closing costs and prepaids. So you could have a 0% down payment program and a down payment assistance program coupled together, and you could get a mortgage that's truly 0% down. Now, if you want to find out more about that, check out my video on how to find down payment assistance programs in your area. I break down 2 really cool tools that'll give you options on what's available to you in your area based on your personal details. So check out that video, hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one.